Ms. Atkins,
Here.
Mr. Hendricks,
Here.
Mr. Houston,
Here.
Mrs. McDaniel,
Here.
Mr. Stoffer,
Here.
Mr. Wylage,
Here.
Mrs. Sheffel.
Here. Can I get a motion to approve the May 18th, 2020 agenda?
So moved. Second.
Madam President, before you take a vote on that, just a reminder what I had stated to you in my weekly update. I realized after the fact that while I have that hearing in here, I did not make an action item for the calendar approval of what we're doing the hearing for tonight. I think it could wait for official approval until June 1, but we could also, I think it would be acceptable, just the presentation is here tonight, so it's not like we're putting something new into the agenda, but I think we could just add action on that in the action items, or you just tag it onto the end if you wanted to do that, or again, we could just approve it next meeting on June 1st.
Okay, and so what number, what discussion item is that one?
Well, it's a hearing. It's not a discussion item. It's right up there up front.
School calendar hearing?
Yeah, number 4. And then Dave, if you could scroll down there all the way to action.
So we could do 2.06 for the school calendar hearing?
Yes.
Or, update school calendar approval?
Yeah, updated 2020-2021 school calendar approval.
I would amend my motion to include that. I think we need to take that action at this time.
Correct.
I'd second that.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, let's go with all that discussion. We can just take a vote on that motion for the approving the agenda.
Ms. Atkins,
Yes.
Mr. Hendricks,
Yes.
Mr. Houston,
Yes.
Mrs. McDaniel,
Yes.
Mr. Stoffer,
Yes.
Mr. Wylage,
Yes.
Mrs. Sheffel.
Yes. Okay, commendation and good news.
For to Dave.
I have several for this evening. Am I muted?
No, we're here.
Very good. The first one involves lots of our kids, and it's something to be tremendously proud of. Yes, kudos to all these kids. We actually, to qualify to be nominated for the All Iowa or All Western Iowa Academic Team, you need to be 1 or 2 in your class, or you have to have a score of 32 or higher, or 1450 on the SAT. We actually had more kids nominated than any other school in Western Iowa. We had 3 students picked for the All Western Iowa Academic Team. There were only 12 accepted on that team. So we and Heelan each had 3, and that's tremendous. And notice one of them happens to be well represented at the board meeting tonight, right? Also, we had 6 in addition to those 3 that were also nominated, which is, when you total that up, those 9 represent more nominations than any other school in Western Iowa. So congratulations to all of those kids. These are links to the World Herald articles that were in the paper for those. Also, I'd like to recognize Lorraine Dutzman. Lorraine is one of our instructional coaches at the high school. She was nominated by Green Hills AEA as one of the PBIS People of the Year. And so if you click that link, you'll go to the Iowa Department of Ed website, where they talk about great work being done in positive behavioral supports across the state. And Lorraine is well deserving of that recognition. In addition to that, Mandy Vincent, our food service manager at Kraft, who has been doing phenomenal work this summer, or yeah, it feels like summer, this spring with our closure food service project. She was also recognized in the School Nutrition National Magazine. So she was able to go and went to DC and was interviewed by the team and is nationally recognized in that journal. And there's a link to that there. And you may have read in one of last week's papers that Dr. Jones was honored as a nominee for Outstanding Central Office Administrator for SAI this past year. She wasn't selected as the winner, but she was nominated by her peers and recognized for nomination. We've had several others in the past nominated. Dr. Jones is well deserving of the recognition. And the last one I'd like to turn over to Andrea.
I just sent all of you your certificates. It is Iowa School Board Recognition Month. So thank you for all that you do. You are all volunteers at this, and so we thank you very much. There's actually 1,859 school board members in the state of Iowa for the PK through 12, 79 AEA board members, and 124 community college board members. So thank you for all that you do. And I sent you your certificates. Normally I would have handed them out to you in a normal board meeting, but I sent them to you electronically.
Yes, we all echo those thoughts. Board members are sometimes very under-recognized by communities, and the work that you do and the governing backbone that you provide an effective organization is it's hard work, and we don't pay you that much. So we appreciate all that you do. And for anybody not understanding that joke who may be on watching our meeting, they get paid nothing. Just to be clear, I don't want to start a rumor, but anyway, thank you all for all that you do. It's a great board to work for too. I've worked for many boards, and just a really effective and well-focused board. So thank you all.
Thank you. Okay. We'll go on to the 2020-2021 updated school calendar hearing. I would also like to put a note in case there is any delays. Our next item on the agenda is comments and suggestions from the public, the audience. And so if you want to go ahead and start, if you have any comments or want to address the board, you could go ahead and do that. So after the hearing, we might already have some comments. So, all right, we'll go ahead and open the school calendar hearing now.
Okay, I'm actually going to let both Dave and Andrea, if they have anything, actually Dave probably to walk down what he put together here, but I give both of them credit because in looking at the calendar, they caught something that would have been a bit of an issue for us. Had us one of our calendar days as a Saturday for student attendance, and they caught that for next year, not the close of this year, which would have been moot anyway, but they caught that and had to make some adjustments. And also there were some pieces to the 21-22 calendar that you all just approved that were very, very popular with our buildings, and we think with our population. So Dave added some of those things. So I'll be quiet and let him explain what's in front of you.
Sure. First of all, the clerical error was down here. We actually had May 1st, and the one was here on a Friday. Actually, May 1st is a Saturday, and it was counted both in the student days and in the staff days. So that's where the clerical error was hidden. It's amazing with all the eyes that we have looking at these calendars that a mistake like that could go unnoticed. But it does give us, as Dr. Knos says, an opportunity then to both fix the clerical error that was there and look at redoing the calendar in a way that mimics very much what you approved for the following year. Many of the aspects of that new calendar, with the input for the 21-22 calendar, with the input of staff and administrators and your input, is now rolled into this calendar. So just some highlights of what we did. We actually did move the beginning day for students to one day later. And we did that so that the term could end on a Friday instead of on a Wednesday. When the term actually ended on a Tuesday before and we had a Wednesday off in the middle of the day, that was very problematic for staff, especially at the elementary level. And so what this calendar does is take the end of terms and puts them on Fridays, which extends the weekend, or in this case, even a spring break for families, and starts the next term then on the following regular school day of the next week. Okay. Another thing that this did was shortens Christmas break up just a little bit so that a spring break could be added. That was something that was sought after for the 21-22 calendar. And with this opportunity to then amend the 2021 calendar, we're proposing that we do something this in the same way that we did before. The other major change revolves around parent-teacher conferences. The conferences this year and for the previous 10 years or so had elementary conferences on Monday and Thursday evenings and Thursday during the day, with the secondary conferences being Monday and Wednesday evenings. And there was lots of talk about those with the staff. The calendar that we presented that you approved for the 21-22 took that Wednesday out of the mix and put both elementary and secondary both on Monday and Thursday. And so this calendar reflects that as well. Those are the main differences. Anything to add, Andrea or Eric?
No, I think not from my end. Andrea, I don't know if you have anything.
Not from my end. It does remove us coming to school on a Saturday. So that is also an advantage.
And again, to those points that Dave outlined, after the process we went through for the calendar for the 21-22 school year that you all approved a couple of months back, the process was highly appreciated by the number of people we put it in front of, and the outcome was highly appreciated. I still am hearing positive feedback about that. It just kind of stepped out of maybe some of the typical formats that it had been in. So I think what Dave has done here will very well be welcomed by many. I don't expect any complaints about it. I guess maybe the only possible would be some people may prefer to still have that Monday and Tuesday to get a full break on the winter Christmas holiday time. But I think the trade-off that you have a built-in spring break is probably going to counter any real complaining we may hear.
Dave, can you go back up to kind of the August through November timing? And just to clarify, there's no change to our beginning day of school. That's
Beginning day of school for the originally approved calendar was the 24th. This actually moves it back one day.
and it looks like it moves staff back a day as
It
well?
does.
Okay.
Mhm.
And Jen, I thought you were, I apologize. I thought you were referring to, a big discussion item right now is if schools are changing their start date forward due to COVID. in the event that we're opening normal. There's, some talk about schools maybe trying to capture 2 weeks of this year into their next year calendar. We are not doing that, haven't proposed that, and still are not suggesting that.
No, I think that's great. That I just wanted to make sure it wasn't moving forward, because I know there are probably teachers as well as families that are hoping, who knows, but hoping to maybe get in a vacation or a trip before school starts too. So great.
Is there any other questions or discussion from board members? And then is there any questions from the public? I don't see any. So if everyone is okay, we'll go ahead and close the 2020-2021 updated school calendar hearing. And the next item on the agenda is comments and suggestions. And Josh Allen had indicated that we haven't gotten any, except for there is one from Tim Wright. Says, thank you, school board members. Thank you for all your service. So that is very nice. Okay, now we'll go on to consent agenda. Can I get a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Is there an updated personnel sheet?
There is. There was one addition to what was sent out, and that is a licensed resignation.
Okay. Is there any discussion?
So where are we sitting teacher-wise and coach-wise? Are we getting close to getting everything filled?
Yeah, I think so. I think we've stayed on top of our departures, and our principals have been really good. We kind of streamlined getting them through to the board this year, and I think we're on top of everything. Correct, Andrea? I don't know that we've got anything hanging out there right now.
Yep, that is correct. I think it's just a couple of coaching positions that are just left, and I think it's just getting them interviewed, and then the 2 teacher positions that we have on here right now.
Is there any other discussion? And we did get a motion and a second.
Yes, we did.
So vote please.
Mr. Hendricks,
Yes.
Mr. Houston,
Yes.
Mrs. McDaniel,
Yes.
Mr. Stoffer,
Yes.
Mr. Weiledge,
Yes.
Ms. Adkins,
Yes.
and Mrs. Sheffel.
Yes. Report 7.01 architect projected capital projects budget update.
Yes, so we have our architects on, I believe. I see their names, not their faces, but I see their names, and they are going to present some updated numbers relative. I want to point out, remind the board, going back to my early involvement in these projects when I came on in July. I think we had a board meeting in August where I reported on some homework I did with our financial consulting through Piper Jaffray, and talked about bonding and the save dollars, which led to our community approval of our revenue purpose statement in November. But we wanted to keep these total projects, all projects, very clear for the public not to know, or to understand, to know that we are not building a $30 million auditorium, but $30 million for all projects was what we had carved out of the budget in our planning. So that's the reminder that I've been giving our design team, and often have to give our user groups when we think about wants versus needs and such. So having said that, that's my introduction, and I'll turn it over to the architects to kind of walk through what they have here.
Okay, I guess I'll start. I'm Kelly Rosberg. We just did a single spreadsheet here that highlights in gold, as you'll see, those are actual building construction estimates. And all of these projects are at what we call the completion of the DD, or design development phase, where we have met with all the user groups for the various meetings and the various departments. And we have updated, we just received Friday our updated estimate for the operations building. And so you'll see that there. We have the site work. Again, the only thing that we have any hard bid on is the early site prep package, which started today on site. And so we have some other site work costs in there that include everything from, fencing, paving, geopiers, which is a foundation. It's like a soil stabilization, and it's in lieu of doing very deep over excavations, which are required by the soils on that site. Because you would be in groundwater if you had to dig that deep. And so then we have the actual building estimated costs in the gold boxes there. And then beneath that, we have indirect costs. And then we have some construction contingencies listed and some totals. And then we have some value analysis considerations. We realize we still have some work to do. We are currently under budget, but we're not as comfortable as we'd like to be. So we're looking at each of these again to see where we might be able to reduce somehow, whether it's through different kinds of materials, or if there's things that could be purchased directly by the district using PEPAL funds, for instance, or something that would allow them to purchase it for a lesser price than having it in a construction contract where everything obviously gets a markup on it. So right now we're currently about $500,000 below what the budget is. But as I said, we're not real comfortable yet. So we know we have more work to do, and we plan to reconvene with the user groups to get priorities on some of those items and take it from there. And then we'll update after that. But we're still on schedule for end of June for the auditorium and CTE edition. And then shortly after that, we would open bids for the operations building.
Kelly, if I could add, just to point out, just to make sure, and I'm sure our board catches this, but anybody that's paying attention, that contingency, which is basically $1 million contingency, that is factored into those numbers. So just important to point that out. And I, as with all construction projects, I'm sure there will be potential need for contingency, but we also built that a bit. We had really good numbers come back on our site prep bid.
Correct.
And we rolled those numbers into contingency to give us some breathing room there, but that's a good situation to be in. So just want to make sure that was understood by all that may be on and watching, that contingency is included in that project total number.
That's correct. And we will have, through the course of reconvening, I guess, with the user groups another time, we will come up with suitable bid alternates, which will also help with a cushion on bid day. That we're hopeful we can take some of those bid alternates, but we haven't identified what all of those are yet. They're a little bit easier to identify for the operations building than they are obviously for the auditorium, because there's a lot more moving parts at the auditorium.
Still a possibility too, maybe just add per discussion I've had with you all recently, that we may also design some alternate bids when it comes down to time for the bids to hit the street. So we maybe, depending on how they come in, maybe allow us to do some things that are questionable as far as whether or not we can put them in the budget or not. But there's some good pieces there that we may be able to consider as we get close to bidding as well.
Correct.
At one of our meetings, we had talked about for the operations building that if we could have options, so like all brick, metal, all metal, are we still going to be able to get those options?
Well, I guess I admit that slipped my mind. We had always been moving forward with the precast, hard surfaces inside, especially in the bus maintenance bay, the storage building, and the grounds maintenance additions there are pretty much pre-engineered metal building with just a different metal panel on the outside. But aside from that, is a pre-engineered metal building.
I think that was the fact that was expressed and discussed a lot through me and some of my conversation with board members, and also in the user groups, that's ended up pretty much being the direction they went with the design. And I think there was a cost savings with that as well. And pictures that they've been showing reflect that construction.
That's correct.
So we're not going to have options then? I guess I was, when one of the meetings when we didn't want to delay anything, and it was specifically asked if we could have options. So I'm not in the user committee, but I guess I thought that was going to give us. So this is an all brick building then, block building?
No, it's insulated precast on the bus bay end. It is a pre-engineered metal building that has metal panels on the outside, and then it has it's a precast concrete base that goes up about 2 feet on the bottom. And then the center part is a conventional framed steel, because that was something that happened between schematic design and design development. We actually were told by the metal building people that it would be less expensive to build that center portion out of conventional steel. So we did change that, and their estimate did go down about $200,000 between schematic design and design development. So those were the primary changes that we made. We also extended the precast up to the structure in the wash bay to accommodate the wall-mounted wash equipment and just the weight of that, as opposed to trying to put that in a pre-engineered, like on a wall system. It also is more durable from a moisture standpoint.
And I do remember some of that conversation when we were back looking at the plan for the building, factoring how the pre-engineered metal building structure can fit within the building footprint and making it as efficient as possible. We talked about a lot of different skins, whether it was brick, precast, metal, and that's where it evolved to precast and metal, just for those things that we talked about, cost effectiveness, speed of construction. Masonry right now is, it's one of those high, those busy items that a lot of contractors are pretty busy with. So we're not seeing the best pricing on it now. So we're trying to factor in a lot of those different things when designing the skin for the building, And that's where we landed on, and we started showing those renderings showing the precast and the metal. But you're right, we talked about it at one point.
So will there be, I thought nothing facing the road was going to be metal though, correct? Or now we're going to have metal on half that one end of the building? I thought we were precast across the face.
There is some metal panels. The bulk of, again, the bus bay is precast, and it has, we'll call it clear story windows up above going into that bay, with the exception of the wash bay. That will have some metal panel wraparound, but they'll just attach to the precast.
It's consistent with the images you all have seen in the past, where there's a combination of the two materials. And, some areas there's a little more precast than metal, others a little more metal than precast. So it gives some variation, which we felt was a nice way to break up the building and not make it feel too utilitarian. We know you wanted this to be reflective of the quality of the rest of your buildings. And so we looked at that with these two materials. So when you, even though there's some metal skin, it's a articulated metal skin, so it has a nice texture to it. It'll give you some of the warmth that I think you'd like to see with this.
The last presentation that the board saw was of the current construction material, so
Correct.
it had been communicated that way in our last meeting around this. So
One thing to mention too, though, to Doreen's point, that of course the board, it's the board's pleasure is most important on this. So if there's still some comparisons that you would want to come back, you can. I think the moral of the story is that in both the user group and some input from board members that were incorporated have allowed this, have allowed some for some positive budgeted numbers, and probably doing something different would put it in the upward, in the north end of things. So, but if the board would still like to see, those things come back before, this is just showing the numbers as how they apply to what you've seen thus far.
Correct.
If the board would like that to see numbers for something different, we can most definitely do that.
Well, I apologize. I don't remember in the last meeting that's talking about what it was made. We saw pictures, we saw floor plans and things like that. So that's why I questioned it.
And you're correct, Doreen. You're absolutely correct. I have that same
Right there, yeah.
recollection, and I just think because of a lot of the input and probably a lot of my conversation too with the architects based on input I was getting, pushing in the metal direction, and this was kind of a good compilation of both. And there was good input from the user group. I remember even, I think Brian, I think it was you that had some input that was well received about not running floor to roof with metal, and hence the panels and such. So it just, I'm really pleased with the numbers coming in where they are, and so it works, and it's with a lot of input from this board and from the user group. But this is just the numbers with what you've been shown, and if the board would like something additionally done and shown, then we can ask that to be done.
Well, I do have a question on the photo or the drawing that shows the front of the building. Couple things that I noticed is all those windows above the bus bays. Who's going to wash them? I know that's just a minor thing, but if we're using it for sunlight, they should be kept clean at some time or another.
They're translucent panels, so they're not like a solid window.
Well, actually, they're a diffused light panel, so they are glass. Just for the record, they're not acrylic. It is glass. It is a insulated glass panel that has a I'll call it a honeycomb, a very thin honeycomb inner layer that diffuses the light once it comes in, so it'll cut down on glare and help make it distributed the light inside, and should additionally help with, lighting costs, electrical costs, operational costs. I can't answer your question about who's going to wash them, Daryl, though.
No, I know, but it's just something to think about it, because they're probably not gonna be, but I guess I would be interested in seeing an alternate on bringing sheet metal or building steel down to having the bus bays done in structural steel, and bringing steel down to within 4 feet of ground level, and then have brick from ground level up to 4 feet, because as I drive around the countryside, which I do a lot going from job to job, I see buildings that have been built that I think look nice, and I'd probably like to see some ideas taken off those buildings, like the Trainer Community Center / Fire Barn. It's a very nice looking building. And today I was going through Malvern. I happened to notice the Malvern Community Center on the south side of Malvern, and that's a nice looking building too. But they have brick on them, and I do like the brickwork that comes up from ground level to about 4 feet.
Daryl, one of the issues we have, if we, and certainly we can take a look, as Dr. Cano said, what you guys are interested in. The nice thing about the precast that we show, it gives us the hardened interior and the exterior, and the durability and the maintenance issue that we have there. So that's working for us. We also, brick is a nice material and can be a nice building. We also think this is a nice building, even though it doesn't have brick on it. So yeah, part of that was the maintenance issue that we have that also worked with the aesthetic. And then just to touch a little bit on the Clear story again, and Brian had started to talk about this thing. It is, Kelly gave you some of the technical information, but it does appear somewhat opaque or semi-translucent. So if it gets dirty, you won't notice it as much, because it's already has some opacity to it. Just filters the natural light, so you don't get light beaming in on you, but just a softer light like you would with the artificial light.
Correct. It won't look clear.
Right.
It'll a little bit like almost not white, stark white, but it won't be clear because of the inner layer.
I guess what we probably need to know collectively from the whole board, if if there is interest in a different design than this, then we can ask, basically employ the architects to do another option that they would bring back. I'm assuming, I don't know enough about these various things to say whether that would be more money or less money, or more efficiency or less efficiency. But again, that's why with a lot of metal in the discussion, in this option, including that, and being the structure that's been showed with these numbers, it seemed like a favorable thing. But if the collective board wants to ask, so I don't know that I'm not asking for a formal vote. We didn't have this listed as an action item, but at least if there's some, some indication as to what the collective board thinks as far as any additional comparisons that can maybe pave the way. No pun intended.
Dr. Canos, can you remind us who is on the user group? Just a quick rundown of that list.
You got Well, we've got Daryl and Brian from here. Randy was on prior to his departure, which of course he's transitioning in to pick up the reins in a different manner. Myself, Dave, we have Mandy, the middle school principal in that group. We have Joel, the high school principal in that group. We have our mechanic. We have Jeff Carper. We have
Cindy.
Cindy, and we have a bus driver. Did I hit them all?
I think so.
So I guess then, because what Daryl said and what Brian said, or Daryl, since you're mentioning this now, it sounded like, Brian, it has been discussed in the user group, or Dr. Knost or Dave or Jeff who are in it. This has already been discussed and determined for cost savings.
Well, I think what's kind of the conversation has evolved based on the various input that's came forward a few different ways. Some of the input came through the user group, some of it came from the board meetings, some of it came from board members through me. And I think in some cases, some direct conversations with the architect. So there was a lot of interest in various steel options and pre-manufactured. And so those things were implemented in this design, kind of a combination, if you will, of various things, because the structure was well received, or I'm sorry, the drawing was well received. And obviously we've seen a lot of detail about the internal. You've seen that in recent board. So it just worked with the numbers. And so that's where the numbers are. But again, if the collective board feels that another option should be compared to this, I'm assuming, I guess anybody can jump in and tell me if I'm wrong, but I'm assuming that I would expect anyway, based on what I know, unless we strip that down compared to what it is being showed, that we're probably going to be talking about whether it's efficiency or dollars, but it's going to go up, would be my guess.
Daryl, were you asking because of you thinking that it's a cost savings, or are you asking because you think of aesthetics?
Well, cost savings mainly because I'm looking at the concrete part of the building. And I know that concrete part of the building it's going to be heavy. It's going to be much heavier than a pre-engineered building, because for one thing, you're going to be putting geopiers underneath that concrete. And if you take the weight out of that building, I'm not so sure you're going to be really needing geopiers under your pre-engineered steel. At least if you need some, you're not going to have quite as many geopiers. And the reason why they put the geopiers in is because of the sheer weight. And I actually do drill.
Daryl, you went mute, at least to me.
Oh, okay. I actually do drill piers also, so I'm well acquainted with what these are.
Can the rest of you hear Daryl?
No, I'm not on mute. Can you hear me now? Okay. No, I'm just looking at it from a cost savings, that the concrete structure on the bus bays, it's going to be heavy compared to pre-engineered structural steel. Because the concrete part is going to take geopiers, we know that, but we really don't know if the structural steel part of the building is going to have geopiers or how many, but the concrete part of the building is going to require more geopiers than the structural steel.
Well,
and I do drill piers, so I have an idea what's going on.
The GeoPeer engineer that we spoke to said, has done a preliminary evaluation, and that there will be GeoPeers required everywhere due to soil conditions, even under the slab where there's no load but the slab. Then of course you're going to be putting buses in there in some locations, so those slabs will be a little bit thicker, and the storage wing will be also a little bit thicker, probably about 5-inch in there.
Right, we have a lot of organic in our soil there.
A lot of something.
Organic. That's why it's not load bearing. There's a lot of organic.
Correct. And that's the purpose of the GeoPeers, is for soil consolidation.
Right.
That allows us then to put some.
And the GeoPeers won't be concrete, they'll be aggregate, limestone aggregate, I'm guessing.
Rammed aggregate piers, correct.
Okay, that's what I thought they'd be. Okay.
If there's anything that I would like to see, and I think the community would appreciate it too, is to draw this current building in relationship to our existing building, just so people can see, because these two buildings are going to be so close together, just to see how the architecture flows across the buildings. I don't know if we can do a rendering like that or not, but I think that that would be beneficial, even for this conversation, because it will be a very visible facility, at least until trees can grow in front of it for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, that was some of my concern was, I think as you look at it, the building looks nice, but I think when you get the middle school in that wing of what's left of the central gym area, I think the buildings aren't going to be as compatible looking as they look sort of on their own.
I guess somewhat relative to that, somewhat, not much, but somewhat, I do want to mention that there's still some decision making regarding the exact how the building sits directionally speaking, and there's some of that for various reasons I think the board understands we can't get into tonight, but there is a point in the near future where we'll decide whether we shift that building or not, and there could be a cost savings or there could be higher expenses with that, depending on some things we find out, including additional utilities and such like that. But I'm only mentioning that now, Bob, to your point, because right now it is shifted more away from, directionally speaking and such. It's really rotated to where it's not lined up right with the middle school. And I think when I see it, I think there's quite a separation there. And boy, I'll be really careful how I say this next piece, being that I'm one of the new guys on the block, but I don't know that I would want to do a whole lot of matching to what that current middle school building looks like on that end. And
do not take my comments I wanted to match at all. I like the building as it's designed right now. I think it is very aesthetically pleasing. I think it's functional. I think it'll stand the test of time. I just think that a lot of people have asked questions that I don't know if they're trying to draw connections to what the school sitting right next to it would look like. And I didn't know if that might answer some questions. So don't take my comment that I think we need to match what that school looks like, because that is not my intention at all.
Okay. And I thought that's also what I thought of, Brian, about what we talked previously about the potential for shifting, which depends on some things, and we know that that's there, and we still have to visit that opportunity. But I do think when you look at it now, and when you consider it from the front, which many of us have done that a million times by driving by, being down there, but the way it is drawn now without rotating it back, there's a pretty decent gap between, because the alignment is not is not there. Well, yeah, huge circle, potential circle drive there that, so if we would shift it back by whatever percentage that possibility is, then it's going to start aligning it back and maybe make that a little more obvious between the two buildings. I don't know if that's relevant. It is in my mind, but I just thought I'd.
Yeah, I like the way that in this drawing here, how it is, it's kind of hidden by the school. And then it has a fair amount of green space even today in front of it that, you know, I think in time you won't even notice the building anyway, so.
So
The only thing I would say is that unless you put some type of a brick, not to say the whole front bricked or anything, but that might tie it into our other buildings on that campus with the, just to have like a brick, I don't know, a base or front or something that might help tie it in.
we can ask for that pricing to be considered.
I personally don't believe it's necessary because I think it looks pretty good with the color schemes and everything that's showing, so.
The one thing is that if they're trying to save some money, the options like Daryl said, that would be the one reason why I would like to, you know, if we could have, that might be a place to look for options because they are trying to save money. We all are. Is there any other?
I know since there's been a lot of input by that user group, I thought Brian's suggestion to have a rendering that shows the building materials as is next to the current building and how that looks would be helpful also for that decision to be finalized.
Kelly,
I'll have to talk to our technical crew about how to accomplish that, but I will be on site tomorrow for another reason. So I can get good photographs from the road there. If we can just through some.
Yeah, that I was going to say, Kelly, if you have photographs, we could almost do a quick study if needed.
Yeah, I'll have to get them tomorrow. I'm sure that I don't have any of the building from like Harry Langdon. Most stuff is from the back. So,
Well, I'm going to say this and I'm going to be quiet, but if we're going to put trees in front of it to kind of hide it, then it's almost immaterial what it looks like then. I mean, it's, in the big picture, I like the brick. Having driven by the community center in Malvern and the one in Trainer, those buildings really look good with, the brick on the front. But like I say, if we're going to hide it, then with trees, then it's pretty much a moot point now.
and maybe we should add for any community members listening that I think the conversation about trees in the past has more been talk relative to, I don't know, Doreen, if it's been your comments, it just, since they're bus bays and such and some warehouse looking components that maybe even was a little bit of what lended itself nicely that it isn't running right along Harry Langdon out there, that it's back a little bit. And there was some considerations also for drainage and such like that. But I just didn't want anybody to think that we were putting up a nice new structure and looking to hide it with trees because we weren't proud of it or anything. But I think it was more so just because it's not a school per se. It's a building with bus bays and warehousing and such, and offices included. But again, I think the board's in charge here, so we can absolutely attempt to accomplish what's been asked and and do some more research and bring some numbers back.
And when are we going to see the flow of traffic plan?
Let me answer that first, Kelly, and see if you have anything to add. We're working through that with Mandy right now. We're really pleased with, I think internally anyway, I know Dave and I feel strongly about something that was proposed back after a lot of lengthy discussion. We've had some lengthy discussion with Lamper and Earson, and so there was a concept that they got back to us that completely separates parent traffic from bus traffic completely, both AM and PM. It just takes some adjusting from a managerial standpoint of how they manage the building and manage student flow, so to speak. But anyway, we're kind of fine tuning that, and then that would become something that we could make public. But I think the board will be pleased with it because of what I just said. Our biggest concern is safety, and I've admitted to this board that every early morning when I stand out there at at the middle school, and I make my rounds there, and I watch. I usually do that 2 or 3 days a week there at the middle school, and it's just an uncomfortable situation, the mix of buses and traffic coming in. So it would completely eliminate that. What we're working on would.
Okay. Does anyone else have any other questions or any more discussion about this?
I would just add that in reference to what Dr. Knost was just talking about, there's also, as part of that component, we're looking at a slight site plan revision to the op site that will allow for some bus staging and for pickup, drop off, and for some overflow parking for the existing middle school auditorium. Be what I'll say outside the fence of the operations center. So that's an added benefit, I guess, of the whole reversal in bus direction or bus traffic, I guess.
Yeah, it is. Thanks, Kelly, for reminding me of that. But yeah, we're kind of looking at originally the fenced area where the buses were. And this actually puts some ability to have bus lanes over there for loading. And when the buses aren't there, that's some wonderful additional parking for that overflow that, as you know, when we have something big in the middle school auditorium right now, we have parking all the way back around Drama South and everywhere. So that would be a really nice addition as well. That just comes from just shifting the idea a little bit, not doesn't come by adding anything.
Eric, would you like me to show a picture of that?
The only reason I would say not, Dave, just to be very candid, we've got, when we go public with something, when we're not, I think we're still putting the finishing touches on whether or not we're going to improve that internally. And it does change. It does change the operation of the building as far as pickup and drop off. So I just would like to really firm that up. I think we're there, but I'd like to firm that up before we make that a public document.
Sounds good.
So just with the talking, it sounds like you're working at something behind the building for buses to go and that.
Yeah. Generally speaking, I don't mind.
That's
I don't mind talking the overview. I don't care to show a picture yet, but yeah, that's what it does, Dorian. It keeps the buses, they traverse from the high school, the back road around, and they're in the back of the building, south of the building, really south of the building, we should say, versus spending a lot of time in the north middle school lot where a lot of that, coming together of traffic in all directions.
correct.
It's a
And we
free-for-all.
Yeah, we had seen an option with that where it wasn't behind. And so that's good to hear that
Yeah.
that is being considered, because I just couldn't understand how you could separate the traffic when they're still in the same north
Right.
parking.
Exactly.
How many arrows or any, anything that you can put in there, so that's good to hear. Thank you.
Yeah.
Does anyone have anything else?
Are we going to talk a little bit about the auditorium then, or do you want discuss questions about that to wait?
You are from a cost standpoint, Bob, or something design?
No, just from a cost standpoint.
If you have questions, you're more than welcome to ask them now.
Well, one of the things that we talked about was I don't see any place in this cost on what materials and equipment were going to be provided. Actually, I don't see it in either one of the buildings. So I'm a little concerned as to where we're at with that list of stuff that BVH was going to compile and provide.
Bob, in particular, are you referring to things like, for instance, I don't know, I'm just going to throw one thing out there, like loading dock lift and stuff like that? Or are you talking more about the structure itself?
Most of it was equipment that had been discussed, within the thing, lifts for the buses, loading dock lifts at the auditorium, equipment, communication technology at the auditorium, the ticket booth or ticket kiosks, those kind of things. I haven't seen that list yet to see what those costs are and how they impact where we're at.
Yeah, and what I've instructed the architects, the design team to do is to separate what's mechanical and what's construction, and what's what's not a construction project, for instance. And some of those things we were even talking about earlier today. We are compiling that list of things, but a lot of that stuff that we discussed is included in these numbers. So that we can, as we fine tune that, we can bring that back to the board. Again, you're not approving, there's no approval tonight. This is just kind of where the numbers are at, but we can bring back those details as we determine what those exact lists are. And again, by utilizing all the information gathered through the user group, all that's considered. And we've been working through those lists based upon the budget numbers and keeping the project in budget. As I've said to the user groups from the get-go, that we can throw out that we need this and we need that, but we want to be good stewards, and we don't want to just run things higher. So I think we've done a good job of determining what's construction and what's equipment, and that'll be my job to figure out the appropriate budgets for those things. But we can bring that detail back to you as we iron out all those small specific things.
Okay.
I think for the most part, again, the construction type things that you're referencing are in these numbers.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I know I do have a list. I don't have a separate list, but it's part of an overall estimate of all of the, what I'll call mobile or portable equipment for the ops building.
No, that's great.
All things that the district could purchase for less than what they could get the contractor to purchase them for, because they would mark it up,
Right.
Yeah.
Concern was more just to make sure that we're catching all those kind of things. And that's what part of that discussion was.
Yeah.
There was a list that they fell in one. I don't care whose pot they're in, but I want them in a pot.
Right, absolutely. And that, I would say that list is probably 95% ready.
Great, that's good to hear.
Right. And Bob, I would also say we have a similar list that's being developed for the auditorium and CTE. A lot of the conversation we have is getting the mechanical, electrical part of the building construction in there for those things to be plugged in. So it's part of our coordination process for sure.
Yeah, I knew that was some of it with, for especially for the CTE. There was a lot of discussion about what needed to be put in, the power and move, and air handle and dust, all those kind of.
Absolutely.
No, I'm good. I think we're making great progress. I think it looks like we're on track.
Anything else we need our architects to consider? I'll follow up with them and we'll talk about next steps with additional information.
Okay, if there's no other questions or discussion from the board members, we'll go ahead and go on.
Nothing on mine. Okay,
The second report,
thank you.
7.02, return to school early preparation planning.
As I'd said in my weekly update to the board, this is very high level and I'm going to keep it short. Of course, the board can ask me any questions they would like for clarification. But as these things begin to be talked about and developed and more people are engaged in the conversation, what I realize is that it brings more dialogue with the community. But it doesn't answer questions. And here's just an example. There's a whole lot of talk now about the plans we need to put together, not only for a return to school in the fall, but some what if contingencies as well. If schools aren't allowed to return, or if there is some version of schools allowed to return. And when you start discussing those things and then some of that hits the streets, some people assume that means we've made a decision to potentially not start school in the fall, and that's not at all. As I said in my, I don't think I said this in my weekly update. I had a lot of communications on Friday. I think as I said this in my communication to the public, that right now it is our intent and our planning that if all is possible, that we will have school in session in what we call a brick and mortar mold. Maybe I'm what I call brick and mortar mold, traditional mold, schools we know it, with some changes, meaning, now that we know about COVID, there's going to be some things that we have to alter in our buildings, everything from hand sanitizer dispensers, maybe to traffic flow, foot traffic inside the building, maybe to how classrooms are set up, maybe how we receive people in the offices, similar to what you see in grocery stores. We may have some plexiglass guards and such, but for the most part, it's our intent. But we have to prepare for what I call 3 lanes. I've done this on these meetings just like this a bunch of times. I'm getting better at it every time. But on one end, we've got bookends. On one end, we've got what I just said, the brick and mortar model that we will fully plan for, being back in session with all of our students, with all of our staff, and with some adjustments made to our minor adjustments to facilities, but probably larger adjustments just to our practices. That's this end. The other end that we have to prepare for, that again, this gets out on the street, people get nervous, my phone rings, hey, I hear we're not starting school in the fall. Never said that, but we have to prepare for the possibility that that switch is not flipped, or it is flipped, however you want to look at it, and we're not allowed to return with kids. Because the difference that we know now is, if at any time we are ordered closed by the state or any other authority with the right to do that, we will have to be in a mode of required learning. Okay, 90+% of the school districts in Iowa in this closure are in voluntary learning, as you know. That will no longer be an option. So we have to make our distance learning, our online learning potential, our plan, we have to make it more robust. And that will be part of our planning process too. So if the switch is ever flipped, maybe it is that we come back in this lane over here and we actually have the brick and mortar model and the kids are in, staff is in, and then November, they flip the switch on us and tell us we need to go back to our distance learning or online learning. We're over on this lane and we need to be able to do that as seamlessly as possible. So we're going to prepare for it. We also are going to prepare a middle lane that is called a hybrid lane. This lane may end up being this big, and it may end up being quite wide and could infiltrate both models, the hybrid model or the learning model. But to some degree, you can look at the hybrid in a couple different ways. It may be school as we know it, brick and mortar, but with a lot less population in the building at one time. And a lot less population could be a number of different things. It could even swing all the way to no students in the building, but all of our staff are in the building and the learning is being done just like it would in class, but it's remotely being done. So we are setting up, let's say in this example, we would be setting up to where the teachers are in their classroom, they're reporting the work, they're teaching, but they're doing that in a distance manner. So a number of different, we're starting to early on slice through the possibilities and develop what that hybrid could look like. But 3 lanes, and that's what I wanted to just explain to the board. So you hear this and anybody on listens to it. It doesn't mean we've decided anything. I occasionally get a call and people say, what are you deciding about the fall? And I have to explain that we have accountability to the state. The superintendent doesn't have the ability to go rogue and say, hey, Board of Education, listen, we got a couple weeks left. Let's just go ahead and open back up. I think kids would come. I'm being a little facetious, but we don't have that, the right or ability to do it. I don't feel like sacrificing our funding from the state. I don't think any of the board does either. So just wanted to do that brief overview of what our planning in the early going is. We have to submit a plan by July 1 to the Department of Education with the state, and it'll be overarching as well. But just as we talk about these things and as our principals talk about these things with their staff, and the word just circulates, I just wanted to be clear that none of it has anything to do with a decision that has been made. We've been told that we will find out on August 1 what we are capable of doing in the month of August as far as students and such being in the buildings. Maybe before then we'll find out more, but that's what we're being told. So that's high level, but I wanted to walk through those 3 lanes. So the board, if you hear the terminology I've been using is brick and mortar on one bookend, distance online learning, the other bookend, and hybrid in the middle. That could be tiny, could be quite expansive. We'll be prepared, the goal, to do any of the above come the fall, or again, mid-November, or as the state is telling us, it could be, and if there are any students on right now, plug your ears, but it could be that snow days look entirely different in the future because of COVID-19. It could be that we flip a switch and say, no school in person today and face-to-face, but we are in our distance learning lane. So you still got to get up and you still have to connect in. So a lot of developing to do, but just to be clear, that's what we're working on. We're abiding by what's being asked of us, and no decisions have been made. We're still waiting for a decision about June, which we get that decision, we've been told, on June 1. That's when we'll know if we are having summer sports. That's when we'll know when if we'll be able to house LCLC summer program. Otherwise, our extended year services for special ed students and our credit recovery program is remaining distance learning through June 30th. So I'll be quiet now and see if there's any questions or comments that anybody has for me on sharing that.
Josh has said there's nothing online. So, but do any of the board members have any questions?
I have a quick question. Just when we're setting up these models, I know that there's a lot of groups of students that may have barriers to distance learning as far as internet like access, computer access at home, or the great many of students in our district that are on IEPs, which is totally separate, but I think needs to be incorporated into what we're going to try and do for them. And I was wondering if any of those concerns have been addressed.
Absolutely, Travis, two very, very good points. And, you know, we have said, I know Dave and I have been in a number of conversations, and I know Chris Evangelistes and, you know, involved in these conversations as well when it comes to the connectivity piece of it. There's no doubt that just, we've got to have a plan. That's part of making it more robust. And a lot of people, when they say, well, we sure wish you weren't voluntary this year, that's part of the reason 90+% of the state is voluntary, because what the state said, if you're going required, you have to tell us that you have the exact same access for students as you do in the brick and mortar model. And we didn't have the ability to do that this spring, but we obviously have to create a plan for that. And there are some challenges, but we will. And yes, our populations that have special needs and extenuating circumstances that create barriers with their learning, we have to consider all that. And that in that regard, I mean, it's very much relative to IDEA laws, and we have to account for that. And that's part of the planning, that the report that we'll have to have for the state. And I think Josh just mentioned that we did submit to Cox some families that would qualify for 2 free months of their Connect 2 lower tier internet service. So there are some things that are ramping up with that too, but it's absolutely a good point, Travis, and you can rest assured that both of those are part of the planning.
Is there anything else from any board members? Any questions? I know I just personally, my granddaughter's in school in different state and in a different school district. I know I'm very impressed and thankful to the teachers and administrators for what they have sent home for the voluntary learning, because I've even sent some things to my daughter because their district didn't send anything. So I think that we are, with everything that I've seen, that we're hitting this hard and providing so much information on learning at home, that I'm thankful to the teachers and the admin who have worked so hard to do that. So when you do have other families or people that you know and what they're being provided, I think that we'll be good. We'll be set for whatever is thrown our way.
Yeah, I think I think the difference, I think I've said this with the board, and I continue to give Josh credit for making this analogy, but you know, no one was prepared to have you know, the last 3 months of school this year be with no students in buildings, and we really had to build the airplane while we were flying it. The goal relative to next year is to have it fully built. There's always tweaks and ways to improve, but we hope to have a very robust option in all 3 of those lanes for next year. Question about snow day option I just saw on there. Let me better understand what that means. When would we know about snow day option? Who is that decision up to?
I had someone text me. They can't figure out how to ask the question online. So they texted me.
Okay.
And they asked,
I think it's probably just referencing what I said a few minutes ago, that the future could look different. And I'm sure that somebody probably had a child in the room and they started panicking that they don't get snow days anymore. I don't know that that's a decision that is coming right around the corner, and anything that kids have to panic about. But I do think when schools are due to COVID-19 ramping up to the ability, to a robust ability where we can have continuous learning, whether we are in the building or out of the building, it does lend itself to what other states are already doing. And there are states, northern states, that they have attendance days outside of school. So as far as a formal decision, I'm speculating. This is not something that the state has said, hey, make sure you let us know, or we're going to let you know when this is happening. Probably, as Dave just commented in the chat, it probably would be a local decision. So it's not anything that anybody has to worry about yet. I just was painting the picture that what we're creating and being required to create, and the idea of continuous learning could lend itself to that in the future.
Well, that's how life is going to be. I don't think we'll ever go back to our past normal. We're going to have to all do a new normal with until things are at least under control, but I don't know if it'll all go back. So do any of the board members have any other questions? Okay. We'll go on in and close our reports, and we'll go to discussion items. 8.01 frontline software renewal.
Turn this and a few going forward over to, oh no, Dave or Andrea, which one's doing the front line?
I can go ahead and do the front line. So the front line is our software product that we use for our absent management and time tracking district-wide. It is due for the annual renewal. The renewal is $20,180.62. Does
anyone have any questions? And this is working real well.
Yes, it is working real well. We actually have just got a whole bunch of updates for it. So we are very happy with how it also links into our accounting software and makes payroll a lot easier.
Is the cost about the same from year to year to renew?
Yeah, it was a slight increase this year. I know there was years in the past, Dave might be able to tell you a little bit more, that there was a pretty significant increase, but I think it has been pretty consistent since then.
It was, it's increased about $1,500 for each of the last 3 years.
How many years have we been using this?
It's a great question. I would have to look that up.
Okay, but for several years.
Yes, yes.
As long as it works with our payroll, I know that saves a lot of headaches and time. We're probably saving money using something like this.
Yes, definitely.
Does anyone else have any other questions or discussion about this? Okay, we'll go on to 8.02, high school intercom system update and installation.
Both Dave and we've got Joe Vinchettel on with us. Hello, Mr. Vinchettel. Good to see you. Gonna tell us a little bit about the high school intercom system update and install.
Joe, you want to go ahead and take the lead?
Yeah, sure. First off, most importantly, happy School Board Recognition Month. So thank you guys for everything that you do for us. I think I gave a pretty detailed explanation of the why and what the changes would be, and then some options, 3 quotes. But some things I do want to highlight. Our current system I've heard different rumors. I wasn't around in 2001 when the building switched, but I've heard that it came over from the middle school. And I don't know if that's entirely true or not, but I do know that the current system is what was put in when the building was built. So it is dying. We've had some issues with it over the past 10 years, tried to fix it and limp it along. We're getting to the point now, as laid out in the board packet, that we're having a hard time finding vendors to fix it and update it. And Bogan itself is becoming a little bit archaic in the realm of this type of thing. And so it's finding vendors to come and repair it has been very, very difficult. Some big things I would like to highlight that would be positive changes for us on the safety side of things. I love the fact that when emergency alerts are triggered, notifications can be sent out automatically. In the few situations that we've had, that's one thing that we feel that we always talk about, that we need to do a better job of notifying other buildings, ISD, the middle school administration, even ERC, in a timely manner, and this system would do that automatically for us. You basically set up alerts via text and email that would go out if an alert was activated. Also, as far as alerts go, you can activate them remotely from your phones if you're on campus. So that is one great addition that we would have that we could do with this new system. Adding exterior speakers would be very beneficial. We've got band that practices outdoors. We've got PE that's outdoors, and Iowa Western, is on our football field often. So this system would actually allow us to have some exterior speakers, including speakers on the complex for those people that are practicing, or if PE is out on the athletic complex. Another safety feature is that it allows us to have some announcements even with power outages. So that's kind of a neat thing that we would be able to have if an update was given. The other thing that we took into consideration pretty heavily is the addition with the CTE and Fine Arts Edition. How could that be added onto it? And this system is extremely modular, I guess is the word I would use. We can add things at any time. We can add integration of classroom alert buttons or through our phone system, but adding on to adding zones for the auditorium and the new CTE building would be very easy to do with basically little cost. Well, they'd be independent. You wouldn't have to change the main unit in order to do that. So very modular that way. So I don't know how much, I don't want to go into great detail and take all your time. Most of the information is in that, in the board packet there for you, but are there any specific questions about any of it?
I would also add to what Joe said in that right now, just to remind you that we already have this system serving our 2 elementary schools right now.
So does this system allow us to use that technology to monitor the doors? Because that's one of the things that I think we're very weak at, is controlling and knowing when doors are open and closed. I think they get open and closed a lot when they're being used in a typical school year, I guess, let's put it that way.
No, this system isn't connected to the doors at all. Our security, video security system is all connected to the doors. And we have the ability right now to monitor all of the key carded doors and whether they're open or closed. Now, one of the issues is that at the high school, we only have 4 doors that are carded. All of the rest of the doors at the high school have alerts on them that are independent of any other system, and they're just designed to sound an alarm.
So that's where some of our shortfall is then.
Well, we haven't, when we first initially put the video surveillance system in, we just included 4 doors at the high school. the next round of updates, which will probably be next summer, would include coming back at the high school and doing the rest of the high school building.
And I apologize, I should have been clearer to start. This is an intercom public announcement bell system. So that's its primary purpose. The safety aspect really comes in. Obviously, communication is extremely important in time of crisis. And so that safety aspect with the pre-recorded messages, unfortunately, we have had to use those. And I will tell you that having pre-recorded, very calm, clear messages has been a blessing in time of crisis. It really helps with the angst throughout the building. If we were to have to get on the PA and make an announcement in the middle of a crisis that wasn't pre-recorded, I think it would definitely change the tone of things. So that's really kind of where that safety aspect comes in. Who can hear it and when they can hear it, I guess, is the point of the PA system. So it's not necessarily a security system.
But safety wise, we can get the pre-recorded if there's a lockdown, if the kids have to stay in the rooms, that things like that, correct?
Yep, we'll use standard response protocol. In fact, I in the past have recorded them, so I probably will do the same thing. It's my voice. Again, that idea behind being able to give a very calm, clear message in the time of crisis. Yep, it's very customizable. The system is pretty much has very few limitations from what I've seen. So yeah, we can do about anything with it as far as recorded messages go.
And is this the same vendor that installed at Titan Hill and at Kraft?
The first bid is the same. They were the KC. Sorry, I've got two screens here. Yeah, look, KC AV, that bid. Dave, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that was the vendor that did both Titan Hill.
It is the same vendor.
They're the low bid. In talking with Dave, because they know our system, this system requires virtual servers for some software to be installed on, and they know our system, they know our district. I believe they were happy with the installs at the other building in talking with Dave. So they were the low bid. It would be what I guess I would suggest. I like that they're local. They've got a rep here in Omaha that has come out about 3 or 4 times.
And what does the middle school have?
The middle school has a very old Bogan system. It'll probably be next on the list.
Okay. And this will reach every room at the high school?
Yeah, if you, there are a couple pages with zones on them. And so we'll be able to break things off in zones. So one really nice feature is we won't have to ring the lunch bell in the classrooms, because the lunch bell, if you have students at the high school, they will tell you it's very loud and it's very annoying. We won't have to ring tardy bells in the classrooms while they're in class when the lunch is released, those types of things. So we'll be able to shut off the bells in the large gym when we have an event like a college fair. So it's very, very robust as far as the ability to program and customize.
Good. Well, I've been in some interviews up at the high school, and you have to wait for the bell to get done.
I did. I included volume knobs in certain areas for that exact reason.
Okay. Do any of the board members have any questions? Okay. Thank you, Joe.
Thank you, guys. Have a good night.
You too. All right, we'll go on to 8.03 Chromebook replacement cycle.
That's Dave.
This year we sought bids to do a replacement cycle for 2 grade levels. As you recall, we've been doing either 2, 3, or 4 grade levels at a time, depending on the particular year of the cycle. This year, we're looking at 2 grade levels, 6th and 9th, and then adding some additional touch laptops to grades K through 3. We have found that we just don't have any extras at that level of the device that the kids are used to, so we're adding 100 there. We looked at 5 different models of Chromebooks and ended with the HP 11 G8 Chromebooks and the X360 HP 11 G3 Chromebooks, which are the same models that we have in place now. It's just the newer generation of those models. The low bid was from RTI, which is not a surprise on our end. They're the company that has been the winning bid for us for all of the HP equipment that we've purchased for the last 15 years. It includes 600 HP 11 Chromebooks, 100 X360 touchscreen flip Chromebooks, which we use for our little kids, 700 Chrome OS device management licenses for those, and then impact shields for the 600 HP 11s. That adds to the durability of the devices.
You know, Eric, in your discussion, you talked about, you know, we have a lot of students that are restricted because they might not have connectivity, but I see that we're not buying any devices for connectivity. I saw that OPS bought all their devices to provide connectivity. Wouldn't it be nice to have devices with connectivity so we could assign to those students that might not be?
When we checked our last Bright Bites survey, where we surveyed parents and students, we were surprisingly only at about 5% of our student population that told us they didn't have internet access at home. So, you know, it's the numbers don't necessarily play out that way. We are also looking at expanding internet services from a community basis, much like Council Bluffs has with a partnership with the Council Bluffs City and with Carter Lake. We're actually meeting with some representatives from the Blink group next week to start talking about that. So we're looking at ways to provide connectivity to those kids that need it. We're also considering things like access points from Verizon. We've done some limited testing with MiFi devices, which allow for a one-to-one pairing with a device. So you take it home, ride the cell network. So we are looking at those things, and those things are going to be considered as part of our plan going forward. These devices, first of all, to purchase Wi-Fi capable, or excuse me, cellular capable devices at the Chromebook level would greatly increase the costs right now. And the vast majority of our students already have Wi-Fi at home. So this is simply a renewal of the devices that we have in place right now. It's not designed to provide additional connectivity services for kids at home that don't have it right now. That'll be another plan coming later.
So these are for just 2 grade levels, 6th and 9th. When will these arrive?
That's a great question. We don't know. That's why we're getting on the ticket now. Typically, we order in May and we have delivery the 1st of July. With the COVID phenomenon globally, there has been some delay in some silicon manufacturers. And so right now we don't have an anticipated delivery date, but we have to get in the queue now.
Gotcha. And right now our students have available Chromebooks.
Yes, we have more than one Chromebook available for every one of our 3,000 students now. We have Chromebooks available for any elementary student that wants to check one out. We hadn't been sending them home with elementary kids until the COVID-19 closure started. We've got about almost 600 checked out to elementary kids right now of the 1,400 or so elementary kids that we have in the system. And every day we get more requests for more to be checked out. We've tried to check out K3 kids. with the touchscreen Chromebooks that they're used to. And for the 4 and 5, grades 4 and 5 students with the Chromebooks that they're used to. But what we found right now, we've got a number of Chromebooks that are aging out where they're no longer going to be able to take updates after August. And so that's one of the reasons to keep on the cycle, to try to stay ahead of that so that they will continue to be supported by Google.
Okay. Do any board members have any questions or discussion? All right. Thank you, Dave. 8.04 teacher laptop replacement cycle.
We through the last 3 years, we've tried to replace the teacher laptops on a cycle as well. We had about 25. We were about 25 short this year, and this is an attempt to bring that last 25 faculty and staff up to snuff about the ProBooks that we provided for everyone else. So this is designed to take those oldest 25 teachers and then give us 10 extras across all 200 plus teachers as loaners, extras. So we're only going with 35 this year, even though a 3-year replacement cycle would say we should buy 80. I don't believe we need that many this year, so we backed that number down to 35. Most of these actually will be going to high school staff also.
Okay. Is there any questions or discussion? All right, we'll go on. Thank you, Dave. We'll go on to 8.05, discussion regarding matters of employment conditions for employees not covered by a collective bargaining agreement. And Dr. Knos, will you talk about going into exempt session?
I will. So Iowa Code, as it's noted there, 21.9 identifies that there are certain matters, this one in particular, where you do not have collective bargaining, so the board is not obligated to have a public discussion. It's different than a closed session because it's actually just a conversation out of the public session, and allows for the discussion of wages pertaining to our classified employee groups that are not covered by a collective bargaining agreement. So we will go out of the public's eye for that discussion, but it's referred to as exempt session versus a typical closed session.
Okay, so do we need to vote to go into exempt session?
No, you just make a statement that we're going into exempt session, and we will then let Josh pull us over to a room.
Okay, so per Iowa Code 29.9, we are now going into exempt session.
21.9, just to be clear.
21.9, that's what I saw. Okay, join. Did it mute everyone?
Yes.
Okay, so if you want unmuted, you gotta hit your button. All right, is everyone back?
Yep.
So, okay. So, for our agenda, the next thing would be comments and suggestions from the public. This time they can address the board, and Josh says that there is none. So we will go on to action items. And we'll go to 10.01 frontline software renewal.
Madam Chairman,
Mr. Hendricks,
I'd like a motion that we approve the contract with Frontline Software for the renewal.
Second.
any discussion? Vote, please.
Mr. Houston,
Yes.
Mrs. McDaniel,
Yes.
Mr. Stoffer,
Yes.
Mr. Wylage,
Yes.
Ms. Adkins,
Yes.
Mr. Hendricks,
Yes.
Mrs. Shuffle.
Yes. 10.02 high school intercom system update and installation.
Madam Chairman,
Mr. Hendricks,
I'd like to make a motion for the board to approve Kansas City Audio Visual to install the Epic system at the high school. It's presented for the cost of $49,676.22.
Second.
is there any discussion? Vote, please.
Mrs. McDaniel,
Yes.
Mr. Stoffer,
Yes, if I can get off mute.
Mr. Wylage,
Yes.
Ms. Adkins,
Yes.
Mr. Hendricks,
Yes.
Mr. Houston,
Yes.
Mrs. Shuffle.
Yes. 10.03 Chromebook replacement cycle.
Madam Chairman,
Mr. Hendricks,
I'd like to make a motion to a board to approve the purchase for Chromebooks, licenses, and impact shields as presented from RTI for a total of $172,650.
Second.
is there any discussion? Vote, please.
Mr. Stoffer,
Yes.
Mr. Wylage,
Yes.
Ms. Adkins,
Yes.
Mr. Hendricks,
Yes.
Mr. Houston,
Yes.
Mrs. McDaniel,
Yes.
Mrs. Shuffle.
Yes. 10.04 teacher laptop replacement cycle.
Madam Chairman,
Mr. Hendricks,
I'd like to make a motion to approve the purchase of 35 HP ProBook 440 G6 notebooks from RTI for a total of $25,025.
Second.
is there any discussion? Vote, please.
Mr. Wylage,
Yes.
Ms. Adkins,
Yes.
Mr. Hendricks,
Yes.
Mr. Houston,
Yes.
Mrs. McDaniel,
Yes.
Mr. Stoffer,
Yes.
Mrs. Shuffle.
Yes. 10.05 classified employee wages.
Madam Chairman,
Mr. Hendricks,
I'd like to make a motion to approve the 3% increase for classified employees along with the other increases that were discussed in the exempt session.
Second.
Sec.
okay, is there any discussion?
Thank you for all the work that was done behind the scenes on this.
Definitely. Vote, please.
Ms. Adkins,
Yes.
Mr. Hendricks,
Yes.
Mr. Houston,
Yes.
Mrs. McDaniel,
Yes.
Mr. Stoffer,
Yes.
Mr. Wylage,
Yes.
Mrs. Shuffle.
Yes. And then we
Madam
have,
Chairman,
yes,
I'd like to make a motion to approve the amended calendar as presented today.
okay, for 10.06.
I second.
Second.
All right. Have to jump in there early, don't you, before Bob does. So Is there
Well, it
any,
wasn't on the calendar. I didn't want anybody to forget, or it wasn't on the agenda. I didn't want us to forget.
well, I'm sure everyone, if I hadn't said 10.06, someone would have said something. So for the 2020-2021 updated school calendar, we have a motion. Did we get a second?
We did.
Yep.
Yes.
All right, any discussion?
Thank you again for that too. I like the changes.
I think this is something that will go a long way toward continuing to improve the district and the feelings that the students and staff have about the direction we're headed.
Absolutely.
Anyone else? Any discussion? Okay, vote please.
Mr. Hendricks,
Yes.
Mr. Houston,
Yes.
Mrs. McDaniel,
Yes.
Mr. Stoffer,
Yes.
Mr. Weilich,
Yes.
Ms. Atkins,
Yes.
Ms. Sheffel.
Yes. Our next regular board Zoom meeting will probably be June 1st. We'll probably still do Zoom unless they tell us anything different. Is there anything else, Dr. Knost?
No, I thought about that today. I think that we need to plan, since June 1 is the day of when we're supposed to find out guidance. I think we just need to go ahead and have a Zoom meeting regardless. But I would hope is, I am concerned that the Pot County numbers continue to go up pretty significantly compared to what they were, but part of that's due to more testing. But I would hope that by our June, was that 15th meeting, that we would be able to be in session.
Mm-hmm.
Well, in brick and mortar session. There you go.
Well, the one thing is that we do have a big ERC area. And so we can still spread out and social distance, and we could always get some plexiglass or something like they have in the grocery stores, or, we'll work that out. But you just let us know, then we'll just keep us updated.
Well, June 1, plan on that being Zoom. We wouldn't be able to, we need to publish that all in advance, and making a change that day just wouldn't be ideal, and taking a gamble on what we think wouldn't be a good deal either.
Correct. Okay, anything else? Otherwise, we need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? I guess you can click off. All in favor, say aye.
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 Bye.
Aye. Have a good week.
Thank you all.